Hi, are you learning CSS for beginners and want to know how to style CSS buttons and links for real world web development projects? If so, you're in the right place. Hi, Martin here from MDP Web Development. Today we'll be working on a project that we'll use as a reference project throughout the Web Development for Beginners playlist. Don't forget to check out the playlist from the start to get a better understanding of HTML and our reference project. It's updated each week with new videos. Be sure to stick around to the end to see how to get the project files on GitHub to use throughout this playlist. I'll link to important videos there also. There's a link in the description down below to the GitHub repository where all the source code is. Let's get started.
Before we go on, be sure to watch the Visual Studio Code Editor video. It explains how to get and set up VS Code for use in the Web Development for Beginners playlist. And also watch the video on creating your first web page. I'll link to them in the description below. Here's a summary to get you started. First, create a folder on your desktop and call it Reference Project. Next, download and install Visual Studio Code Editor for your operating system from the link in the description. Open VS Code, then open this folder and create a new file called index.html. In the file content, type an exclamation mark and hit enter. This should create a new standard document for you. Open the file from the desktop folder and it should be a blank page as we have not put any content in it yet. If you get stuck, just watch these videos first.
CSS button and link styling. For these links and buttons, we can use the button element or we can use the link element. Usually the link element is used because you want your button to point to a particular location. We can see here the AH reference has a slash, which means go to the home page, and the link is called home. Nav links are created usually using an unordered list. This is for ease of use, ease of development, and for Google to know that the navigation has actually a list of elements in it. If we look down here, we can see the nav tag and closing tag, then the UL unordered list, then each list item LI, and inside the list items we can see the AH reference equals index. We can see all the links. We're going to style these links and turn them into buttons, so they don't just look like normal page links, they'll actually look like buttons. We're going to use reusable classes for this. One reusable class is going to be the .btn class, just means button, short for button. This will be reusable because all the buttons will use this. This will be the structure of all the buttons. We can see in the button class .btn, we have the padding top, bottom, left and right set to 5 pixels and 10 pixels. So there's a bit of space around the text inside the button. We have the text align set to center, so the text appears in the middle of the button. And we have a border around the edge of the button. This is a very good practice to separate the structure from the skin of items. This will be the button structure. So if we have a nav button, contact form button, and a submit button for something else on our site, they can all use this .btn class because this is just a structure. We can go back then and have a separate skin or color class for nav buttons might be blue and white. Submit button might be cream and black. Then we're going to use a .btn nav for styling specific to our navigation. We can see here .btn nav, just going to have a background color of RGB 198, 198, 240. This is very handy because we can apply any other class then to different buttons. The structure of the buttons, just one class, and then the colors in the buttons, we can set it with just one line of CSS. We're also going to use an active class. This will show what page you're on. Like if you're on the home page, the home button will be highlighted. And if you're on the examples page, the examples button will be highlighted. Basically, any element we put this .active class on will show the background color of white, as we can see on the bottom right. Hi, before we move on, please don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe so you don't miss out on any upcoming videos. Thank you.
So now we're going to open Visual Studio Code and our project and a browser window on the right to preview our project. It's going to go to our desktop and double click on Visual Studio Code. Then we're going to go to the Explorer view and open folder. And mine is on the desktop, so I'm going to go Desktop, Reference Project, select Folder. And here we can see we have our HTML file. If we open the browser view, we can see the reference project folder and the index.html file we created. Now to see the browser window on the right, if you have the live server extension installed, you'll see Go Live button down here on the bottom. And if you haven't, you just have to go out to your desktop, open the folder, and click on the index.html file. So once you've clicked on that file, we're just going to click this Go Live button here. And that'll start up a new browser server window for us. So a handy shortcut for Windows to put something on the left and right is to press the Windows key and then right or left arrow and release the Windows key. Then select the one you want on the left or right. So I'll close this panel. So another handy shortcut for Windows is the zoom key. If you press CTRL, then the plus to zoom in and negative to zoom out. So we can see here we have our Windows browser on the right. So the only difference if we had to open this manually on the desktop and click on the file is if we make changes on the left in our code editor, you would have to click refresh on the right to see it.
We have VsCode opened on the left, and we have a reference project in a browser window opened on the right. And as you can see, I've moved VsCode over a bit to give us more room. So in our example project, we're going to open our index file and also our MyStyle CSS file. So for styling these buttons, we can see here on the right, again, CTRL and plus can zoom in and minus to zoom out. We can see here all the links. Because they're an unordered list, they actually have a dot beside them. So let's start by removing that dot and formatting our list to look correct. We can see here on the left we have the unordered list, list items and anchor elements. Now let's have a look in our CSS. And we're going to create a class specifically for our ordered lists and unordered lists to reset them, to take away the dot and to maybe reduce margins and padding. So let's start by creating a class called list reset. So any list we have that we don't want the dot or the bold icon to be on the side of it, and remove all margins and padding, so we can just add this class to the list. We call this class list reset. And in this class, we're going to want the list style type set to none, so we can get rid of our dot. We can see here VsCode is going to autocomplete the list style type, and if we hit end for none. Now, let's just attach this list reset class onto our list of navigation links we can see on the right. CTRL and plus to zoom in. Here's our unordered list. So now we're going to attach our list reset class onto this list. So we're going to go class, and if you hit enter, and list reset. And if you click save, file save or CTRL and S and refresh on your browser, you should see that the bullet points have now disappeared from our list. But it looks like we still need to do more because we can see our list by default is not at the left of the page. So we have no idea what the paddings and margin are for this. So let's go back to our list reset class now that we know it's working okay. And we'll just set all the margins to 0. You can see now the list has been brought up to the top, and we'll set all the padding to 0. And the reason we have to do this is there's a browser inbuilt user style sheet, browser style sheet, which puts margins and padding on lists by default that we can't see in order to make them look nice. So we just removed all that default settings. Now any list we apply this list reset class to will get formatted as we can see on the right. The disks will be removed and margins and padding set to 0. Now, next we're going to start creating the btn class. This is for the structure of buttons or any links we put .btn class onto. So let's just do a test here on the first link, the home link. We're going to put class btn and save our project. Now let's create our .btn class here. Dot signify class btn. So for all our buttons .btns, we're going to have the structure of padding 5 pixels top and bottom and 10 pixels on left and right. So we're going to go padding 5 pixels, 10 pixels. And we can see here, if we just specify these two numbers, the first number is taken as top and bottom, and the second number is taken as left and right. So 5 pixels padding will be added on the top and also the bottom inside our element, and 10 on the left and right. Now we also want our text to be aligned in the center of our buttons. So let's type in text align center. And that's going to align our text in the center of the buttons. And next, to make them look like a button, let's put a border around this link. I'm going to go border 1 pixel, and then we must apply the type of border, solid, dotted or dashed. We'll go solid. And let's just go one step further and type in black. Now we can see here on the right it's starting to take shape. So now let's apply that class that we created, .btn. Actually, let's just go back for a test and we'll remove this black. Let's go back now and apply that btn class onto the rest of our list elements on the right hand side. So we're going to go down to the next one inside the reference link tag. We're going to go class equals btn. And we can see on the right there, we now have the button class on that one also. Of course, they're getting overlap now, so we're going to sort that out in a minute. Now let's put this btn class inside all our links that we want to style. Again, ctrl&s or file save on your project or refresh in your browser window if you don't see the changes. Now, we can see here on the right now, all our buttons are overlapped because we haven't specified the direction we want them to go in yet. And we've created our button main structure btn class. Now for this list element, each one of these is a link. And now we have to set how we want them to be actually displayed. We obviously don't want them just all coming down one underneath each other like this. So CTRL and minus to zoom out. Now the best way to do this is to look at the fact we have an unordered list. And we want every list item element inside it to be placed left to right on the screen and not top to bottom as it currently is. So for this one, we can see the element at the top is nav. Then we have the unordered list, and it's actually the list items under that we want to display left to right. So nav, unordered list, and list item. So let's now go into our CSS. So to reference an element, you don't use the hash or the dot, you just go the name of the element, which is nav, then ul for unordered list, then list item, li, then our curly brackets. Now we want this to display left to right at the top and not top to bottom. So for this, we're going to type in display and hit enter. And we can see all the different options we have. We want inline block. Inline means one after the other, and block means displayed in a block element just to follow the natural flow of whatever direction it goes in. At the minute the flow is top to bottom, we want it inline left to right. So we're going to choose inline block. And if we click Ctrl and S and refresh on our browser, we can see the changes. And if I zoom out in the browser, you can see them all now. They're all arranged at the top there. How cool is that? So next, we're going to have a look at the button nav. We need to set the colors. So far, we've used the .btn class to set the structure. We can use this class now on any buttons, and all buttons indeed, that we create, because it's just for the structure of the button. Nothing to do with colors in class. Now let's create a particular color we want on our nav buttons. So back in each nav link here, let's put in a class and call it btn-nav, so that we know this is specifically for the nav buttons. Now let's create that class as to what we want our links to look like. Dot to signify it's a class we're working with, btn nav. Now what do we want inside here? We want just a different background color. Let's just set the background color to something for the nav buttons. I just choose any color here. And we can see now on the right hand side, if we zoom in a small bit, that the home button is now our color, because it's a nav button. I'm just going to remove the screen here slightly, so if you hover over the middle and drag, both windows will resize, and Ctrl and plus to zoom in. We can see here now that our button has changed color. Now we need to apply this class to all the rest of the buttons, so that any time we change the btn nav color, all our buttons for navigation will change color. So we're going to put this btn nav class into all our button classes here. And again, Ctrl and S for save, or file saving your project and refreshing your browser if you don't see the changes. Now we can see all our buttons here on the top. They have what we wanted for the nav colors. So you can see here now, the next thing is when we hover over these buttons, they don't really change, just the underline comes on the link. We don't really want that. So let's change the hover properties for these links. So we've just created our button btn nav specific to navigation. That's what each one of these now are called in their class. So if we want to hover over one and change its attributes, we have to say the class, which is .btn nav, then colon. And we can see here we have different options. If we type H for hover, HOV, hover. And whatever we put in this class now is going to happen on hover over of this last button. So when we hover over it, we'll say set the background color to something different to show you that your mouse is actually hovering over the button. So let's type in background color and we'll just change it to any other color here. So whenever this class is hovered over, then it should background change color. We can see here the background now changes color when we hover over it. So now we can see now all we have left that we need to fix is this underlined link on the links. We don't really want that in a button. It doesn't look right. It's fine for links on the page, but not in a button. So from what we saw before, we can do text decoration equal to none. That means when we hover over it, it's not going to get underlined. So inside our btn nav hover class, let's go text decoration equal to none when we hover over it. Now to CTRL and save, refresh in your browser. Now when we hover over the buttons, we can see we don't get that ugly underline anymore. That's much better. The next thing we'll do now, we'll put an active class just to signify what page you're actually on. Like when we click home, the button is still the same as all the rest of the buttons. Standard practice would be to have whatever button selects the page you're on highlighted to let you know what page you're on. So let's just create a class called called active. So we go dot to signify we're creating a class active. Open curly brackets. Now let's just set this to some sort of shade of white. Let's just go background color white. Now any element we place this active class on will have a background color of white. So on the home page, we're actually on the home page now. So let's attach this class onto the home page link so that when we're on the home page, it will show up as white. So then we know we're on the home page. So here we can see class, we have our btn nav. So we're just going to go at the end of this line, create a space and put in active. And CTRL and save or file save and refresh in your browser. We can see now when we're on the home page, the link is by default white. That just shows us we're actually on the home page. And we can see here in a minute we need to fix the examples page. That will just be a copy and paste. So now we can see here all the links look much better. But if we zoom in, we can see that they're actually crammed right up against the image on top. We don't really want that. We want to give a bit of space there and make it look nice. So if we have a look here in our CSS from our previous video, we can see we've already created reusable classes for margins. We have margin large, top, bottom, padding large, and colors. We can look at this class and say margin large, top, bottom. Let's try that and see if that will put a nice margin top and bottom of our nav elements. So we can copy and paste the class name. Now where do we want to put this? Well, this entire navigation links are actually in the nav element here. We can see the nav element. So if we attach that class onto this nav element, it'll give a margin large top and bottom. So we go class and paste in margin large top and bottom. We can see here on the right now, we actually have a nice size margin. It's not crammed up against the image. But to me, that looks a bit too much. So let's just go back to our CSS and create a margin small top and bottom. So we can copy the margin large class. And I'm going to call this margin small top bottom. And let's just reduce this down to 1 EM, 1 times the default text size on the page. And click Save. Now back in our nav element, let's just change this to margin small top bottom we just created and save. We can see now it looks much better. The other margin was too large. It looks nice now with a bit of space above it between that and the image and underneath. So when we hover over these links, we now need to fix the examples page. Reference works, CSS, JavaScript reference. But of course, the HTML page for the examples is its own page, so we just have to copy and paste what we've just done onto that page to get it to look like the other one. So CTRL and minus to zoom out. So let's just copy the entire nav element from nav all the way down to closing nav. And let's go into our examples page. And let's select our entire nav element here and CTRL and V for paste and then save. So now when we go into our examples class, we can see here on the page, all the buttons are now highlighted. So now we can see we're on the examples page here in the top. So let's actually set the active class now on the examples button on the right and not on the home button here on the left. So in our examples page, just zoom in, CTRL and plus. Here we have the home link. So we're just going to remove the active class from the home link on the examples page and put it down here into the examples button. We can see here now when we're on the examples page, the active class is on the examples button. This just shows us the page we're actually on. So if I click home, the home button is white. We're on that page. If I click examples, the examples button is white. We're on that page. Now, while we're here, let's just tidy up some of the CSS that we created. We can see we have a lot of CSS here. At the start, we have the body, H2, paragraph, and link styling. Let's just put some separation here by putting a long line in the comment. That's for styling links. The next section is for colors. So / and star. CSS for colors. Star and /. And we can see here then, we have padding large, margin small. So let's just tidy this up a bit as well. These are reusable classes. So let's just put in a comment saying reusable classes. These can be used anywhere. So let's put anything we have a reusable class in here. Reusable classes, padding large is reusable, margins, list reset can be used anywhere. Even the .btn class can be used anywhere. And here then, these links, as we can see, are specific to our navigation. So let's just put in a comment /* navigation CSS * and save. Now this will tidy up our CSS much better. We have the home CSS, basic CSS, styling links, CSS colors, reusable classes, then CSS specific to the navigation.
So to get the files used in this example, the HTML reference project, just go to the GitHub link that's down in the description of this video. You can have a look at it here. So a GitHub repository is just a location on the internet hosted by a company called Git that most developers like to share or store their code in, either for their own use or to share with other developers. The repository on GitHub is just a folder used to store code or files, etc. Let's have a look at each folder. So when we're in the repository here, you can see the name of the repository there, actions along the top. You can see the main folder here, and there's a README file too. So if you want, you can just click onto the folders and see what's inside them and download the code from there. But to get all the code, you're going to go over here to the code button. We're going to click and download zip file. Once that's downloaded, go into your downloads folder. Then we need to extract it. So we're going to Windows, you're going to right click and extract all. Now let's just have a look at these files in VsCode. So we're going to go to our desktop. We're going to open up Visual Studio Code. And now we're going to open the folder that we just extracted. Open folder on the left. And we're going to go to Downloads. And here we are. And you can see here on the Explorer view on the left, there's the folder we can click to expand. And here's the reference project folder. And here's the HTML file, so we click on that, and there's the code. You can use this for reference or to rebuild your project if something goes wrong.
Hi, I hope you found this video helpful. If so, please like, share, comment and subscribe so you don't miss out on any upcoming videos in the Web Development for Beginners playlist. See you next time.